Anthony Moyles, good morning to you.
Morning, Jared. How you doing?
Well, we're all pretty excited, aren't we? It's like a new day, a new dawn.
Yeah, it seems a bit like that, all right. Yeah, it certainly does. And I think we've been talking about it the last kind of, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks, I suppose. I think probably since the Meath game, that there was cracks there in the giant, and I think eventually those cracks told.
It did feel like the Meath and even the shabby enough performance against Kildare was just boredom at one level, but it wasn't. It was actually something more fundamental than that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I wrestled with this over the last couple of weeks as well, and they just didn't do boredom any of the other years. They did ruthlessness, they did putting you to the sword, they did basically, a very diligent game plan. There was ultra confidence. So I don't truck with the whole thing of it was boredom, because that is an unbelievable. If you're standing there as a manager and you see that seeping into your team and your squad and your play, you're actually very alarmed, because that's not something that you can just get rid of on the training pitch. That's now a kind of something that's getting into players. That they're clicking into that mode. So I think what it was uncharacteristic errors, fellas trying things that they normally wouldn't try, maybe a lack of confidence in what they were doing, maybe a lack of confidence in the game plan, and all of those things looked fine, because in the first half you're kind of saying, well, actually, you know what, this is all okay. They're doing what they normally do, but when the pressure really started to mount, and when the pressure really came on from Mayo. So when Mayo, a la Meath, and Kildare to a certain degree in the Leinster final, when they really squeezed up, when they really applied pressure, not only on the ball carrier, but also on the actual receiving men, the inside men, and the six forwards, well, that's when the cracks really started to appear.
Well, let me just read this here before Owen comes in on this. So this is James Horan. He was asked, what did you say at half time? This is interesting. So not much. Just got back to our structure a little bit. They were getting their kickouts away very easily. We were a bit out of sync on that. We just went through a few things there and talked about lifting our energy a bit and doing what we're strong at. Nothing too mind-boggling. It was very similar to the last game. The group of lads that are in there, a lot of trust, a lot of belief, blah, blah, blah. Just disappointed we didn't get motoring earlier. You know what they're going to do and the way they're going to play. We were going out to them in ones, trying to press the ball, and he was just popping it off to the next guy. You need to go out to them in twos or threes and try to cover the out ball. It was a matter of putting a bit more pressure and trying not to be as deep. We were a lot more physical. There was a lot more contact in the second half. I think that's the key point there, where Mayo's identity in the first half was kind of like, oh, it's an All-Ireland semi-final. They've killed us. They've absolutely annihilated us in short bursts before. Let's not let that happen. In the second half, they were actually, we have a game plan. We need to stick to that. And that's be physically aggressive. You are the one who knocks. You are the one who is going to be bringing that pressure, that rock and roll style, heavy metal, and it's the only way to do it, right?
100%. Like how many times over the last number of years have we seen Kieran Kilkenny take that ball, say under the Hogan stand, and canter across the pitch all the way to the Cusick, nearly unopposed, soloing across, looking for runners. And teams have said, oh no, we're okay, we're zonal inside, we're marking the inside men, and we're okay here. We have them all the way out there. When actually it never works, never ever works. Like you have to, the first man you have to apply the pressure on is him. And uncharacteristic, if you watch his performance in the second half, he gave 4 or 5 balls away. I'd say if he ever sits back and watches it, I'd say he'd kill himself, because he threw up kind of 50-50 hand passes. He threw up some loose kicks. Some really, really odd, strange things. But of course, pressure causes you to do that. The head is fried and you're making decisions that you wouldn't normally do. So absolutely right. And I think, again, and people dismiss the Meath performance. I'm not going back, but the second half, there was a ball that came down and Lavin got a hand in on Con O'Callaghan. It was the first time where Meath really went toe-to-toe with them. The ball went up the field and Meath got the goal. And straight from that situation, Meath pressed and harried and hit all around the field. And Mayo did the same. They just harried. They corralled Dublin players into little pockets. Then one fella got a tackle on. They were on the ball. They were hitting them. They were trying their best just to return the ball. And Dublin, really, they self-destructed, Ger. You know, that's the only thing you could have to say. They self-destructed from a setup point of view. They self-destructed from a discipline point of view, and they most definitely self-destructed just from actually, you know, their normal cool heads and calm under pressure. So you know, Horan hit the nail on the head there. Like, I mean, it wasn't rocket science, but it was just an increased level of intensity. And to be fair, you know, Mayo can do that because they have fellas who have an unbelievable level of conditioning. Like, there was a spell in it, if you remember, Keegan gets his point, I think on around, I think it was around 50 odd minutes. And Dublin are on the attack, and he's probably standing at around a 21 with Con O'Callaghan right beside him. And he's marking O'Callaghan. And as the ball breaks down on his left-hand side, he just goes. You can't see him going, but what ends up happening, he ends up coming into the frame of the picture at around 40, 45 metres out, collects the ball, steadies himself, banks it over the bar. And O'Callaghan was under pressure, as was Kilkenny, covering those runs all day. And we saw that obviously when the pullback that O'Callaghan did on him. So that energy, that enthusiasm, that intensity, that desire to drive on was ultimately what made Mayo win the game.
It's so strange, Anthony, what happened after half-time, because at half-time, you're looking at Dublin on 10 points, Mayo on 4 points, and you're saying to yourself, this game is over because I can't see Mayo getting to 20 points. That was my rationale, that Mayo absolutely needed to get to 20 points to have a chance of winning this game, but because they were on 4 points, they had no hope. And as it turned out, even after extra time, they were still 3 points short of the 20. 20 is what Dublin got in the final last year. I think it was 21-19 in the finals in 2019. So it is like clockwork, the fact that Dublin hit that target in every single game. The difference this year, though, is that Dublin's goals had started to dry up. They didn't get a goal on Saturday night. They got goals in all those 3 games that I'd referenced. It does seem astonishing that Dublin witnessed these goals drying up all season long and still maintained the same game plan on Saturday, that they hadn't tweaked something to try and be a little bit more aggressive, to be a little bit more direct.
I think going from, you know, I know we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, and I've heard of the, you know, different people chatting about it on off the ball over the last couple of weeks. Whereas people have been asking, you know, what has changed? Would this be allowed under Jim Gavin? So the idea that, you know, fellas are taking kind of pot shots from 40 odd meters with the outside of their right boot, this kind of thing. And, you know, I was even saying that, look, under Jim Gavin, you had certain players who took shots on and certain players who didn't. And that was just the doctrine, and that's what you believed in, and everyone believed in that. Whether you believed in it or not, you just did it. But it's funny, people would probably feel that Desi and his management team are a bit more kind of, you know, loose with regard to giving the players a bit more responsibility and saying, no, look, go try things. But actually, his play is actually more cautious than Jim Gavin's, and the way they're setting up is more cautious than Jim Gavin's. They continuously do this possession game out around the 45 and 50, going over and back, over and back, over and back. A couple of backdoor cuts, a few things of guys coming in, but they don't do it like Donegal. They don't run those really hard angles. They don't kick the ball in. If you remember last year and a couple of years ago, they had kind of Kilkenny in on the square a couple of times, and they'd launch a long ball in on him and see would he cause mayhem. More than likely he'd catch it or he'd get fouled. They don't do that anymore. They don't have that electric pace coming from the half-back positions a la Jack McCaffrey or Merchant. They seem to go to a certain area on the field and then nearly put the brakes on. And I don't think there's enough movement inside. Now, maybe the players inside feel, well, you know what, I'm not going to get the ball here, so I'm just going to hang out in the corners and look to loop around. And I think players have worked that out, and Mayo worked it out. Mayo put 2 guys in that central column around the number 6 position. So anything that was kind of looped around or anything that was going to be worked intricately, they were there, they had players. So a lot of the people outside, like Fenton and Howard and these guys, had nowhere to go with the ball, bar lateral. So, you know, I think it's an amazing statistic to think that, you know, they had a situation where, okay, it was 10-4 at halftime. It probably should have been 10-7. Like Aidan O'Shea, for all his woes, he should have had probably easy 2 points in the first half, and he should have got another one in the second half. He should have had 3 on the board for himself. But, you know, I take your point that you would have thought that they would normally, Dublin would rack up 18, 19, 20 scores. And you're right, most teams would go in figuring we have to at least score that. So to see the demise of that from a forward play, maybe the writing was on the wall. Maybe it was already there, because if you even go back to, I think the very first game they had in the championship, they didn't light it up on the scoreboard either.
Against Wexford, yeah. Yeah,
against Wexford. So I think it's more of a. Does he have the forwards? Absolutely, he does have the forwards. But I just think I think they changed to being understanding maybe the statistics on the game and thinking, okay, if we hold possession for 65% or 60% of a game, and we look to probe every now and again, or we look to get frees, or we look to get a man open, or we look for the opposition to make a mistake, well, then we'll get scores. And it's funny, if you play that game of that constant moving across, perversely enough, it actually gives you the opposition a bit of a break, because the opposition can take a bit of a breather, and the opposition can essentially set up to counter-attack you. And if the opposition are bringing the intensity that Mayo brought at that spell, where they're really up, as soon as a loose hand pass or a loose ball goes, or a bit of a spill on a dirty night or anything like that, and they get it bang, they're gone with unbelievable pace. They're obviously fresh. And they're able to counter-attack you, whereas you're all set up trying to kind of probe and slowly kind of get a score. So, it's a game plan that essentially every time you attack, if you're holding the ball for 4 or 5 minutes and you're going across and fellas are making runs, you better make sure you score, because if the opposition gets it, that's like a score for the opposition, and now they have you in a counter-attack, and essentially that's what happened.
Just for some breaking news this morning that Liam Sheedy has announced that he is stepping down as the Tipperary manager. His management team have gone. Tipperary GAA have issued a statement on their website this morning. So we'll get more reaction analysis on that a little bit later on. I don't know if it was expected. I think there was definitely a thought that it might happen, but it has been confirmed this morning on the Tipperary GAA website that Liam Sheedy is stepping down as the Tip manager. Let's go back to the Gaelic football and the Dubs. Could they have done something differently? Did Dublin need to iterate and be more aggressive? Because at half time you're saying that this plan is working. Like, I know you're saying it could be 10-7. It could have been 1-10. Like, Dublin also missed some chances in that first half.
They did, and James McCarthy, pretty much right from the throw-in, comes down the field and, kicks the ball, has a goal shot. Pascal's one after the John Small hit. If he flicks the ball across to John Small, it's probably a goal, and he probably has a shot himself. So, Dublin could have had 2-10. I think, it's funny, Ger. I think when a true champion, which Dublin have been over the last number of years, is going to fall on a sword, I don't think it happens. I think it's a build-up, and it's a collection of a lot of things. But ultimately, the team that beat them have to have more desire. And it's those small little moments. It's the tiny little 1% that actually make the difference in the end. It's not the big things. It's not the missed goal chances. And people say, well, that's probably a stupid remark. But those things will go either way, right? It's the small little things, because the small little things sets the tone for the game. It sets the tone that you're never going to give up. You're not going to give in. You're going into the dressing room at the end of this game, and you're going to go in absolutely just out on your feet, dead. Like, you're going to empty every single thing you had. And ultimately, I think that is what actually happened. I think Dublin tried to go to the well. They went to it again. And when they went to it a third time, I think they found that the well was dry. And the well was certainly not dry for Mayo. They grew in confidence. Every hit they got, every ball they turned over, every lost cause they chased. There's that kind of very famous picture now going around of Dermot O'Connor chasing that 45. If that was a normal situation where he was getting frustrated and he didn't believe, he would have just given out and the ball would have went out over the sideline. Yeah. He wouldn't have even chased that. Instead, he went, or the end line, he ran and ran and ran. And let's be honest, most fellas would just give out to the fella who kicked the ball in and say, Jesus, come on, lads, let's get the next kick out. That was a lost cause, a complete lost cause. There was another situation, I think, coming near the 5 or 6 minutes into the first half of extra time, where a ball was in around the middle, and one of the Mayo lads gets a hand on it, and it was a mill. It was like a scrum in the middle of the field, and James McCarthy went down to get it, and Mayo just jumped on it. I mean, they went in, They didn't care about their heads. They didn't care about themselves. They went in, they jumped on the ball and managed to pop it up. And I remember I just looked at the frame. McCarthy's lying on the ground. He's kind of holding his shoulder. And it looked like, well, there's our last leader that we had to take out. And he was kind of on the ground as the play went. And you could nearly, it was like there was this kind of a sense of resignation on his body, you know, that he was like, okay, that's it. That was the last 50-50. That was the last battle. And we've lost that one too. And I think ultimately, again, that's what happens, you know, that's what happens to the great teams. And to be fair to Dublin, they didn't go down easy. You know, they fought and fought and fought. But I think ultimately just Mayo had more in the tank in the end.
The Aidan OConnor thing, I think, isn't getting enough credit for the actual technique of it. Of course, like the hunger is the main thing there. But like, I mean, it's straight on the volley. When I saw the picture,
kung fu.
Yeah, I thought for whatever reason I had in my head, oh, it like trickled. It was like on the half volley or something, and it was like one of those that he eventually got to. But it's straight on the volley. Like to get power behind that was incredible. Like it's like just thinking about some of the different aspects of the Mayo performance. Anthony, like they had on the Sunday game last night, Rob Henley's kickouts, and Henley was amazing. Like we can't take anything away from him. It was possibly his best game in a Mayo shirt. But even if you are in amazing form, coming up against a set of forwards and a middle third of that quality from Dublin, you should probably be losing a few more kickouts than he did on Saturday. Or is that, am I totally missing the point here that his amazingness completely superseded what Dublin or any opposition could have done to him on the night?
You know what? I think Dublin again will look back on it, Owen, and I was surprised. They gave him a lot of outs on his left-hand side. You know, just a short little kick out, just out. They again. I don't know. I don't think it was an arrogance thing. I don't think if they decided actually we'd give them a few kickouts and we'd set up back here. But I think Dublin needed to. Like Dublin should have made more hay in that first half. You know, like Mayo were there really for the taking, and Dublin, we spoke about it, they should have had 113, 114 on the board because Mayo were lacking in energy. I think they were too concentrated on the high ball into Aidan O'Shea. So there was a lot of lateral movement from them, and then someone got a ball and they just basically stuck it up in the air, caused a bit of mayhem. Yes, we could have got 1 or 2 scores from it, but what it meant was that there was a situation where they didn't have that energy running through the middle of the field. And Mayo, when they're at their best, is when they're off the shoulder, 2 or 3 runners, you know, and they're just coming at you in waves and waves and waves. That's the way we've seen them over the last number of years, and that's when they're at their best. So I think Dublin will look back on it. Henley was, you know, I think he was amazing to kick the score. You know, I still don't know why it was retaken, right? There's been various different, you know, it'll be like the JFK situation, you know, why did it happen? Who did it? And who allowed? Like, I mean, I don't know if it was Philly McMahon, I don't know if it was Kieran Kenny, I don't know if it was Maurice Deegan, but you know what?
16 on the field was 16 Mayo players in the field was the official. It's kind of like.
Oh, was that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay. Well, then.
But at what point did Henley know that was the case, and at what point did the ref and the linesman decide? The other thing is, I think like if he'd missed it, the ball was coming out, and Mayo were so dominant at that point that, you know, as opposed to the extra 2.5 minutes that didn't get played, the referee blows up after that, like the absolute chaos and carnage. Let's not get into the refereeing because we could spend an hour complaining about the misuse of umpires and all that kind of stuff. But can Desi regenerate this team?
You know, it's funny. There's a great article there. Jackie Tyrrell did a good article on Kilkenny in the Irish Times on Saturday, and he's talking about where Kilkenny are with regard to, you know, the last number of years and their standing in the game. And he was mentioning the underage teams coming through, and he's mentioned the fact that they haven't really contested many minors and under 21s, etc., over the last number of years. And I'm not saying it, but Dublin have been in a similar situation. You know, Meath hammered them this year in the minor. You know, they've been thereabouts, obviously, because of the pick of players and everything else. But, you know, I'm looking there, and you're kind of looking down, and you're looking at fellas who will come on and who will become the next big players. Like Paul Mannion. Is Paul Mannion going to finish forever? Is Jack McCaffrey going to come back? Obviously those two players coming back would make a big difference. But if you're just picking, and if you're looking at who they have now, there's probably going to be a few retirements. And they have had, as everyone has mentioned, they've had an enormous turnover of players over the last kind of certainly 2 seasons, and a lot of big leaders and a lot of big players and a lot of big impact players gone for them. And you know, the thing is, when you have a golden generation like that, your impact player always is your impact player. He's a guy that you continuously bring on. So the young lad who's behind him never really gets much of an opportunity until he's gone. And now it's like, okay, now it's your time to step up. And you're like, well, okay, I'm 24, 25. I've only probably really, you know, the amount of really minutes I've had in championship matches is relatively small. And then you're asked to do the job that this stalwart has done for the last 4 or 5 years in winning All Irelands and winning games for you. So that's a lot of pressure. And, you know, it's yet to be seen whether Pascal and Costello and these guys can carry the mantle of that. They still have, you know, some of their leaders, some of their main guys are still young enough, of course, to keep battling on. But I think the question marks that we had and lots of people had of whether Dublin were coming into the pack in the last 6 to 12 months, I think the answer is that most definitely yes. And I think the rest of the pack has definitely improved. The question mark is now as well, is this the way it's going to be for the next number of years? And you know what? I hope it is going to be like that for the next number of years, because, you know, okay, for the first 50 minutes of that game, it wasn't great. But Jesus, the last 30, 35, 40 minutes of it was just absolutely edge of the seat stuff. And you know what? Hopefully the championship for the next number of years is going to be exactly the same.
If you're Armagh or Monaghan or Kildare or Meath, you're surely looking at what Mayo did and going, okay, so Mayo obviously have a slew of brilliant young athletic footballers. But again, to go back to James Horan's point, it wasn't rocket science. You know, it was, here's our plan, let's stick to it. Physically, we need to bring the challenge. Those counties can do that. It's not like you need 6 or 7 world-class athletes to do that. It's that you need a very clear plan and an identity and a structure that allows the players to know exactly what they're supposed to do in and out of possession of the ball. I've obviously oversimplified it grossly there. But my point is that there's a template there that other teams can use now that they should be aspiring to, as opposed to, well, if we sit back and put 15 men behind the ball, we might only lose this game by 3 or 4 points.
But I think the main thing of all of that, Ger, is belief. You know, it's confidence, it's belief. I didn't think Kildare believed enough. I was disappointed because I think Kildare have a lot of athleticism. I think they have the forwards that would cause you problems. I think they have big men who could match up against them. And I think they just didn't believe enough. They did not put enough intensity and heat on the Dublin players. I think Meath for 35, 40 minutes didn't believe enough. And then when they started to believe, they outscored Dublin and they performed very, very well. I think now it's like everything, you know, when the king is dead, people start going, oh, geez, why didn't I do that? You know, I could have easily done that. Well, like, I mean, it takes the first man to step up and be brave enough and be confident enough and have the belief that actually, do you know what, we can do this. And look, it's only fitting because for the last number of years, who has been that challenger? It has been Mayo more often than not. So I think if anyone was going to put money on who the people would actually, who would dethrone them, it was them. But it gives the Chase and Pack belief now. Now, belief isn't the only thing that gets you there, of course. You know, you have to bring all the other things that you mentioned. But I think it can quite often be the missing thing when you have everything else. You have the intensity, you have the fitness, you have the athleticism, you have the skill, you have the power, but the belief is the thing that in that last second or in those small moments that I spoke about, you let the ball go over the end line. You don't chase it down like Dermot O'Connor does. And again, as I said, I don't want to simplify it, you know, but I think that is ultimately what got Mayo there. And got them there, you know, with style.
I have one last question. Will Aidan O'Shea start the All-Ireland final?
Oh, you know, I was thinking about this yesterday, and I was kind of erring on the side that he won't. But at the same time, I think, to be fair to Aidan, I think he could have easily had 3 points, right? Like the one in the second half that he catches. If he sticks his hand up, he just marks that. But he was trying so hard then and trying to kind of catch up and trying to chase the game and his own performance in the game, that he was trying to, you know, he caught the ball and he had 2 or 3 guys around. He was trying for a goal, and you know, like, I mean, he comes out then, he tries to get involved around the middle of the field, and he gives a bad hand pass away. And you could see the confidence was draining from him. The confidence when he hit the post with the 14-yard free, the confidence was going up in him. I'd say he built himself up a lot, Ger, coming into that game. I don't know, but you know, he was captain of the team. Dublin have seen him as, you know, a kind of the main go-to man, and a kind of I suppose the power of Mayo, and a guy that if they can manage to turn him over and hit him and get him, you know, kind of going backwards, well, then they've managed to tick a big box. So I think Aidan probably felt that pressure. He probably felt like, you know, I have to go in here and have a big performance. I'm going to really bully a load of guys. And I think he probably put himself under way too much pressure. That's certainly the way it seemed to me through his performance. But I do think he still adds something that Kerry or Tyrone, as it happens, won't particularly like, which is a fulcrum, a big man in around full forward. It has worked for them already this year.
Yeah.
I think Horan won't completely abandon it. So I think it's all about his own reaction from his personal point of view and how he trains and how he gets his head right. But I wouldn't be surprised. But personally, you know, is he a guy that you bring in? I don't know. It certainly would lift the crowd, you know, the Mayo crowd, if he comes on with, you know, 25 minutes to go. It would give them something different. But you would have to feel that if they're bringing him in because they're chasing the game.
Yeah, it's crisis.
And then
and
it would be high balls in. And, you know, high balls in, they work sometimes, but not all the time.
Is there a plan C here, Anthony? Start him in midfield?
It could be on, yeah. Like, I mean, with 25 minutes to go, you could say, listen, just go out and spend yourself now. Completely just empty the tank for me for 25 minutes. And, you know, he could do that. But, like, Croke Park on All-Ireland final day, no matter when it's a big pitch. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of athleticism going on. Like, you see the modern-day midfielder, they're kind of... They're 12, 13 stone, you know, 13 and a half stone. They're not 14, 15 stone anymore. They're guys who are able to motor up and down the pitch. Yes, they're tall, but they're really athletic and lean. You know, they're covering the ground. And it's hard for a fella, like, I mean, Aidan is in remarkable shape this year. He's in the best shape of his life, I would say. But still, I think you could use him potentially at an 11. But I'd say if they were and thinking about it, you're talking about having him inside on the square.
Okay, we've got a couple of weeks, turns out, an extra week to debate that one. Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
No bother, lads.
It's Anthony Moyles with us this morning, trying to make sense of what we've witnessed at the weekend. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Didn't on go for Dublin to win by 10 points, says Ray on YouTube. He must make Mayo favourites for the final now, surely.
Yes, I did. That's a good point. I've got to tactically think about that, Ray.
If Kerry win, Kerry are favourites. Are they? Or are Mayo automatically favourites now?
Well, we'll see in the power rankings tomorrow who really are the number one team in the country, because, well, Kerry are still All-Ireland favourites, with the bookies.
Are they?
Which tells you a lot, because they've got to go through 2 games and also that Mayo performance. Like, the Mayo are so weird. They're just such a strange entity, aren't they? That, like, they after extra time, they scored 17 points and they beat Dublin. I mean, it's just... Again, I don't know, we've laboured this point quite lots this morning, but it's the way they did it. It's the manner of the win. And that just kind of... I'm very much in my shell after my prediction on Friday, but I think the manner of the win would make you even more reluctant to make predictions after the way they did it, and whoever they come up against is going to be strange. But the Aidan O'Shea thing is going to be fascinating. Like, the last time he played Kerry in Croke Park, he was a full back. Like, that is going to be the biggest talking point about this build up to the final, and it'll only be a bigger talking point if it's Kerry that they play in the final.
Bring Donaghy back, is that what you're saying?
Bring Donaghy back, yeah, exactly.
They'll be back next year, lads, says John. They don't become a bad team overnight. He's obviously talking about the Dubs. Let's run you through the sports pages very quickly.